Hello, everyone. Ho, ho, ho. Merry Christmas. Welcome to our annual foray into the most iconic film of the holidays ever, film period, right? How the Grinch Stole Christmas. This evening, we've got a lineup that's blew my mind when I read it, and then I got to see what was going into it. It's going to blow your mind. There's like surprises all the way through. And of course, it wouldn't be How the Grinch Stole Christmas night without the host. I'm the reindeer to his Santa, Mr. Craig Kausen. Come on in.
I am here. Yeah, we're across the country again, and but it feels like we're hanging out together on this special How the Grinch Stole Christmas show. I know you know Ben, but maybe there's some people out here that don't really know kind of the history because people, oh, another cartoon. But there was a lot that went into this. There was and that's, I think, the whole theme of tonight is the making of, not just the people that made it, but sort of what led up to it. So I know you've read more books than I have on the history of Chuck and the history of animation. So, and I've told my side of the story that I make up every year. Maybe you can tell, your reflections on from how this thing came about, where Chuck was in his career, and love to hear you tell this story for once, or maybe again.
I'd be delighted. And what I would like to tell people this evening is you're in for a show. We've got some amazing things. We have guests that I'm just dying to introduce and bring on screen. We've got artwork to see. We've got stuff you've never seen before. So as each part goes through, believe me, you're going to want to hit the whole thing because we're revealing stuff all the way through. So to Craig's point, the Grinch, How the Grinch Stole Christmas is, I've watched it from when I was a kid all the way, obviously, till now. My kids and I watch it. And what I found interesting, and you see the final production of something, and you just see the swan on top of the water, right? You never see the feet paddling underneath. And wow, it's just so graceful as it goes on. You just see the finished product. But really what goes in, and what I love too, reading more about this and Chuck Redux and, his second autobiography and other clips and stuff they did, it was, you got to put the work in, and it doesn't just come easy. And holy cow, to get something made. So, having two legends, meet to make this the iconic film. Like, how does that all start? You go back to World War II, and they're working together in the animation unit, and Private Snafu and all that stuff going on. And so there's the birth of a relationship, right, in that atmosphere. And then from there, you get into, like, you would think Dr. Seuss, all right, all these books, they would make fabulous animated shorts and animated films and all these wonderful productions, but it's not as rosy as you might think. And he ended up being very displeased with the whole Hollywood scene and all of that. And, in the 50s, and you got just losing creative control on things, being paid $50 from Leon Schlesinger. That's what he got for the rights to Horton Hatch's Egg. $50. How do you do that? I don't know. So, and then there was another production that he worked on when he was working on a film, and he got 500, but he was not getting credits, or he'd get like one tiny little name, like no recognition, none of this stuff. And he was like, you know what, forget it all. And, you fast forward up until when, Chuck comes out. He leaves after 30 years, leaves Warner Brothers, and all the success and the wonderful films that he created there, and dotting the line, Oscar, working with the legendary Maurice Noble. And what a wonderful film that is. And he's getting into these productions and looking for projects that he wants to produce. And naturally, where do you go? I would go to Dr. Seuss, right? And to get up there, and really, you have nothing if you don't start with the guy who created the stuff. So it took turn after turn after convincing to kind of get it going. And finally, he gets, Dr. Seuss on board, and, turning his book into a full-length film he was never for. And, when you read it out, it was what, 10 or 12 minutes or something like that. It wasn't a long read. So how do you expand that to a 22-minute film? And all that Chuck did once he got the blessing to work with that, and then, like, we don't have to do that these days, right? The network just buys the project. Well, what I found fascinating back in the day was, after you get this, you got to do the whole thing. You don't have any money yet. you have nothing, right? You're just trying to get the money to do the thing. So you got to do all the storyboards, which is how they did the film. So there wasn't like a script. It was all done in storyboard. And you get all the artists to get everybody together. He got his crew, you know, from Warner Brothers, the unit back together. And I know we have Ben Washington's grandson on tonight, and we're going to be showing some of Ben Washington's production drawings, which is awesome. And so he's got his crew back together, you know, they're working on a thing, and you have to go pitch it, like to sponsors, to companies. You just have to go find a company to give you the money to make this thing. And I forget what the initial cost of an animated.
So I wanted to just compliment you here that the and compliment in both ways, with an I and an E, so that we can compliment each other, but I can compliment you on a very nice rendition of the history of it. You know, and the one thing that I'm not sure that everybody knows is that after the dissatisfaction that he had, that he had to go down and talk to Dr. Seuss in La Jolla and just basically ask, you know, and we'd love to do this. And because of that dissatisfaction, he said no. And Chuck did a little more, like you said, a few drawings and whatnot. And he went back down and made the pitch, and Ted said, you know, I love you, Chuck, but no. And finally, after, you know, gathering the entire vision and being able to communicate that, and the promise that he would have creative control, that he would have endless quality of this whole thing, that Seuss finally said yes. And so, you know, and part of this was Chuck's vision on how expensive it was going to be. And you ask, in fact, I saw the preliminary just development budget today. I was searching through a few little things and saw that budget. And it was, so a normal half-an-hour television animated special was about $20,000 or $25,000 at the time, which is a lot of money for 1965 or 1966. You know, Charlie Brown came out, and that's the type of budget that they were using. And so the just development of it was just under $40,000. That's before any production was done. That's storyboards and design and that sort of thing, without any sort of animation. And the final budget of the film that he took to Roger Mayer at MGM, $366,000. So yeah, I mean, that's like, hey,
what is it, like
you
15 times, 16 times
yes,
the cost of a yeah.
Exactly. So, you know, all of a sudden you have something, and you know, I think last year I was lucky enough to find an article that actually referenced the words that not only was it the most expensive piece of animation, at that time in 1966, it was the most expensive half-an-hour television special ever. Any half-an-hour of any television ever done, by far. So think about presenting that to Roger Mayer at the studio, saying, oh, by the way, you know, we're going to make a film. It's like going to Disney today and say, oh, we're going to spend $2 billion on a film. What do you think? No. Why don't we just say no? And like you were saying, you got to go out and make the pitch. And Chuck doesn't go out and just, you know, shake it to the trees. No, he and Maurice Noble. So Maurice Noble had a budget of $3,300. So think about that, just to do initial storyboards with Chuck so that they can make the pitch deck. You know, these days you do it digitally. Back then, the pitch deck was hundreds of storyboards that showed exactly what the story was going to go through. And do you remember how many? Because they went to Kellogg's. I mean, Post. They went to, you know, all the regular people that would pay for this, and they all said no, because there's no way they want to put up 16 times the amount of money. That is just crazy. Like, where's the payback on that?
Well, you know what I love is, first of all, Bill here, I know my green light is out. See the Grinch still trying to ruin Christmas. That's okay. What I love about it is 26 times. Like, can you imagine being said no to like 5 times?
Oh,
10
you
times.
just get
And then
frustrated.
you've got something that's already 16 times the normal price of something, and you just kind of keep. And what I love about what Chuck said, first of all, I love his perseverance, right? And he gets into it, and what I love what he says in his book was, he said, of all the places that would give us the money would be an organization that, you know, we're all saying about how, like, Chris, you know, not commercializing Christmas, right? You know, and it's not about presents. So naturally a bank would fund that. Spending money, right?
The
Yes.
Association of all community banks. So it was,
Right?
that was on the 26th presentation. Think of
Right.
that. 26 presentations to get a yes. That says something right there.
That's yes. And to just keep at it. I think that was, I thought it was hilarious when I read that. And, you know, to his point, and just the fact that he just laughed at the irony of it. So you go ahead.
I was just going to say that part of it that I didn't, because somebody asked me, you know, just this last week when I was telling them about the show and about this $366,000 budget, and he goes, "What on earth could cost $366,000 to make a cartoon?" And you know, so I was, it stopped me in my tracks. I'm just like, well, of course it was expensive, but now why? And it came down to the people that were involved. And so that is what I think is so important to realize, that this was not, you know, just limited animation that was being done on television. This is the same crew that actually is sort of a superset of the original crew that was at Warner Brothers for all those years, making all those cartoons. And so, you know, you look at I mean, you've got background artists like Phil DeGard, you've got Maurice Noble on the project, you've got Ben Washam, you've got Ken Harris, you got Lloyd Vaughn, you've got, you know, Phil Roman, who actually is still with us. He's turning 92 next week, and he was the young guy on the crew back then. You've got, you know, the Chuck, obviously. You've got you know, all of these great people who are running a production company. They just won the Academy Award. These are top-notch people, and it's going to take a year to create this film. So to support an entire production company for nearly a year, that's how it gets in there. Plus, Dr. Seuss has to get paid. You know, all the things, there's every part of this needs to get paid properly. So, you know, it's the quality of it. And that's the promise of this whole thing, is top-notch quality. And you don't get that for $20,000 necessarily in the same way. So,
well, you know what I found like amazing is he just won the Oscar. Okay, clearly, you know, the man, because he's, you know, 30 years at Warner Brothers, all the stuff. I mean, he got Oscars there and stuff too. He just won an Oscar with his own production company doing his own thing. All right, maybe 3 times you say no, but on the 4th, who, like, imagine the 25th guy that said no, right? Imagine the 25th guy, and he was like, "Are you kidding me?" And then the National Association of Community Banks come out, and every 1 through 25, all the 1 through 25 no's are like, "Oh my gosh," and they're going for the antacid tablets. They're probably feeling ridiculous. They totally blew the shot at the most amazing thing ever. And look at the length that this thing is on. Look at the legacy of this, right?
It continues to grow. You know, I met with my mother and I met with Roger Mayer, you know, a few years before he passed away, and you know, he was the guy who he was the producer at Warner, at MGM at the time, who said this can't happen, and yet years later he said that when you look at the numbers, it grew every year. It got more popular, it got more viewership, it got more demand, and sometimes they actually played it twice because of the demand, that they could actually play it over and over, and after decades it continues to grow. And so, as he said, that is the sign of a true classic, that it continues to grow. And they knew that within 3 to 4 years that this thing was going to be perennial. And it obviously has shown that it continues to be a classic. And it was the guys and the gals who were involved who did that. And so, such as, and I would love to, so part of this whole thing is how this film was made. Very similar, but in a broader scale than what Chuck and his team did back at Warner Brothers. It always starts with character, and it in Chuck's mind. So Dr. Seuss had created the characters, but then he had to expand not only the story, but he had to expand the characters and make them into something he thought would translate well on to television. I learned something this last weekend. We actually went to a panel on the Grinch in LA this last Saturday. And my mother and I were, I was lucky enough to be able to hang out with my mom all day long, which is awesome. A treat. Yes. She showed me something that I'd never seen before. And I think maybe we should bring her in, because this is sort of, she gets to share a little bit about like the real beginnings of the way that two geniuses get together. Hi, Mom.
Hi. Yes, it was fun being with you all day on Saturday.
Yeah, that was great.
We seldom have that much.
No. But you showed me something that I had never seen before, and that you have in your possession. So that little book that you showed me,
right? And
you have it.
Yeah, it happens to be the front of it, or part of the front of it is my background.
Oh, nice! You took a picture of it.
Yes, this is the book.
Yeah, and I like it that as soon as the book gets in there, you disappear. Wow.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, that's a magic book is what it is. So yeah, you're good. You're good. I tell you, why don't, because I mean, everybody's seen a How the Grinch Stole Christmas book, but why don't you open this one up and tell us give us a few examples of why this one is a little different than others.
Okay, well, I'm going to show you, first I'm going to show you when I found this a few years ago, because Chuck had left it for me, but I didn't pay much attention at the time, I guess. On the first page, there was this, which is,
you talked about storyboards, Ben.
This is a Maurice Noble storyboard, very early ideas.
What?
A couple of
yeah,
them.
I know. I did the same thing. Like, what? It's
These
just
are
hanging out in the book.
This is the very first book that Chuck and Maurice made notes in. There are others that were later, but this was the very first one. And he just went through it and made some little notes. You can see some penciled stuff in here on this page, which happens to be unnumbered page.
Well, you know when the Who's are coming in for sure. So
yeah, and one of my favorite ones is near the. Let me see if I can find it real quick. When he's taken all the stuff and stuffed it up the chimney, which is one of the little notes he made in here, was that it was a chimney, not a chimney. But at the bottom of this page, let's see if I can, right here.
Yeah.
You see that? That is a little sketch of a rolling ornament, which in the film was what woke Cindy Lou Who up. But there was no thing in the book about what woke her up. She just appeared. And so this was his first idea about a rolling ornament.
So he was directing the film in his mind in a book beforehand. Yeah, wow.
Little things that because as most of you who have read this book know, that it doesn't take 24 minutes to read. And so one must add things to it in order to make it into 24 minute. Is it 24 minutes? I think it's 24
Yeah,
minutes long.
it's either 23 or 24 minutes
Without
of
the-
animation. Yep.
Yeah. And so the wonderful little notes that he made in here, and then he clipped those little Maurice ideas. The very last page of the book, as you can see lots of
Yeah.
his notes on that page.
That's crazy.
But there's another book. I think you know where that other book is that was later.
Yep.
That has more, because many of the things that are noted in here, they didn't use.
Yep.
But it was his first read through with the idea of making it into a half-hour special.
Wow.
Pretty
And
cool.
yeah. So that's where, and I kind of take it in sequence, and then I actually have something, because always talking about character. So the story needs to come, and Dr. Seuss needs to get engaged. And there is another book with some notes from Ted and from Chuck, but I can't remember if we have a storyboard in there. If not, I'm going to grab one and put it over here, because I've got a separate camera sitting over here. Is there a storyboard in there, Ben? I mean, not a storyboard. I'm sorry, a model sheet.
No, I do not have a model sheet in. So
Okay, I'll be right over here just a second. I'm going to show you one. This is an actual model sheet that was given and used by the animators. So this is a reproduction. There's actually, and the way that they're made is that a negative is made, a stat is made.
I need that. When you showed that when we were going through stuff a little earlier for pre, I was like, oh my sweet mercy, that's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Look at how the lines, oh,
I know they are pretty sweet.
Craig,
but yeah.
Yeah, I want to just insert something just to
Please.
complement what Ben was talking about and what you were talking about earlier about the amount of work that went into making this film. And one of Chuck's favorite sayings, one of his favorite principles or philosophies that he said often was that anything worthwhile, any project that's worthwhile is 90% work and 10% love, but only the love should show. And that's the way I think we all feel about this film, is that only the love shows. We don't look at it and think, oh my God, look at all the stuff that went into that. No, it's an enjoyable, wonderful experience, and I think only the love shows.
Oh yes, I would totally agree with that. And I've read through lots of Chuck quotes, read through both his books. Like, the words of wisdom are plentiful and are to be digested and ruminated on. And I love that quote because nobody sees, and that's part of what I love about when we do the makings, that these shows with the films and the behind the scenes is, we see that finished product and how amazing it is and what it means to everybody, and look at how long the legacy of this film is. But man, they worked it, and they worked it hard, and all of that effort that goes in. And that's another thing that I love about Chuck and what he exemplified, and with his team, was all of the hard work that went in. There was no skimping on time or halfway doing something. He put it all in, his team put it all in. Chuck and Dr. Seuss, they knew there was one voice only, one. It wasn't like, well, maybe we should have a few people read through. No. We need one guy, okay? And by the way, he's a big deal. So you need one guy who's a big deal to do this one thing. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And so tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we have the wonderful, the beautiful, the radiant Sara Karloff. And how I would like to introduce her tonight is what I read, Sara, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, is your father, when he was on the set of, I believe it was The Son of Frankenstein. It was his 51st birthday. And he was, what a wonderful birthday. You're just celebrating on Sunday, Son of Frankenstein. And he said that the best birthday gift ever was you, because that was when you were born. And that he had rushed to the hospital from production, right? Still in full makeup. Can you imagine Frankenstein showing up right at the hospital and he's like, "Where's my kid?" Right? So,
Hi, Sarah.
welcome Sara to the show. It is so lovely to have you.
Thank you. I hate to disillusion you.
Go ahead.
However, there's a wonderful photograph that often appears in magazines of the nurse holding me in the hospital and my father dressed as a typical English gentleman gazing down at me. They wouldn't have let him off the set in that Frankenstein outfit. And who in the world would have let him in the hospital doors? They would have locked him up.
Okay, I'm disillusioned.
He changed his clothes. He did not go in costume to the hospital, but it has made a wonderful story through the years.
Yes, it has. Well,
but you heard the reality
I
here.
was the most expensive birthday present he probably ever got to.
Well, I would say every penny was worth it, and it is such a joy to have you on tonight, and to talk about your father and his influence not only on this film but just in general, and talk about a legend of the horror like monster scene. And you go back from and when I was reading a little bit more up on this, to go back when Frankenstein came out in, what was it, 1931, and that was his big breakthrough as far as being noticed film. Weren't there like 13 other films that year that he was in? So if somebody saw him in there, they could see him in like 13 other films, and this one was the one that hit. And from there, it was just a rocket ship and a legendary voice, and just a legendary presence. Go ahead.
Actually, Frankenstein was my father's 81st film.
81st?
81st, and as he said, nobody saw the first 80.
So when we went through, and Chuck and Dr. Seuss, like they knew they wanted your father. There was nobody else. And what I found interesting in your father's history too, and just what he would do, it was very diverse. Theater, film.
He'd do anything.
Right?
Considering his 20 years in the business.
Yeah. He and what I loved about that too was there something, and you could tell us, was there something because I had read that he enjoyed like the children's book narration and those kind of things. Was there something in it that he found that was it a thing? Like what thing was it about that he just really enjoyed doing?
Well, he loved working with children and doing work for children. He had done 20. Not by that point, of course, he had done 20 albums, recorded 20 children's albums for Caedmon, and he had a Reader's Digest radio program that had run for like 10 years, I think. He had been in Peter Pan on Broadway, playing Captain Hook as well as Mr. Darling, and he loved it when the kids came backstage to try on his hook. So he really, he was the antithesis of most of the roles he played, and he really enjoyed working with kids. He said that, and I've read this many places, that little Maria in the Frankenstein film wanted to ride with him in the car every time they went somewhere to shoot. And kids were not afraid of the monster. He said they got it. They understood that he was the victim and not the perpetrator. And I think his empathetic, sympathetic manner in which he played that role set the mark for that particular role. As far as the Grinch is concerned, my father was very, very modest. He never brought his work home. He never talked about his work. And one night my phone rang. And at this point I had 2 children that were two boys who were very young. And my phone rang, and it was my father. And he said, Sarah Jane, I've just done something that I think is pretty good. Now, the fact that he would even call about anything he never done or had done. And he said, I thought maybe you and the boys might enjoy it if you wanted to sit down and watch it. It's going to be on the telly. The British coming out in him. It's going to be on the telly tonight at about 7 o'clock your time. He was in New York. And he said, I think it's pretty good. But you know, if you'd like to watch it, pretty good, yeah. He had never before and did not ever again call me to tell me when something he had done was on and maybe I would like to watch it. He was so pleased to have been asked to do that part. He so enjoyed doing that part, and he was so pleased with the way it turned out. He loved the Grinch role. He loved being part of that team and part of that property. He just was delighted. And for him to pick up the phone and call me and suggest that maybe the boys and I might like to sit down and watch it was extraordinary.
Sarah, I had been told by Chuck that your father did the Grinch reading in one take. Did you hear that as well?
I heard it from you last week.
But you,
I hadn't heard that before, but my father was one, luckily a quick study, but what a difficult script that was.
yeah.
And the changing of one part or one voice to another as quickly as that verbiage takes, and it's just amazing that anybody could do it in one take. But
It's true. And
it surprises me, but it makes me very proud at the same time.
Chuck was amazed and just overwhelmed with the idea that it could be done.
Well,
that
dialogue is so tricky, and the words are so clever, and yet almost tongue twisters. And the change of one character to the other back and forth done so quickly that it would seem next to impossible to do it that way. But as I say, my father was a quick study and was really a very dedicated professional.
Well, he certainly was. And as Ben and Craig both mentioned, I knew at the beginning, my father told me that he couldn't do it unless your father was the narrator, and there wasn't any other person anywhere. And of course, your father was one of the great actors of the world from the time that he started, I'm sure, but certainly from the time that he got recognized by everyone. But it was a great privilege and honor for Chuck to be able to work with your father. He appreciated it and loved the opportunity to do that.
Well, it was an honor for my father to be involved. He really, really enjoyed it, and
I'm so happy
was
to hear
very
that.
proud of being included in that project.
You and I are very lucky people.
We really are. We really, truly are.
I wanted to say that our audience, which keeps expanding as we go through, they love you, Sarah, and they love you, Linda. They love you, Craig. I'm just here for to hold the table.
They love you
Well,
too.
we love you.
No doubt.
So I wanted to ask, I have a question for Linda and a question for Sarah. Linda, Sarah had mentioned like his father, her father, it was big if she's getting a phone call, right? And it never happened before and it didn't happen after. So clearly this is a big deal. was there a moment with Chuck, where you had mentioned, like, kind of like the home life and stuff, what it was like with Chuck growing up there, but was there a moment with this film specifically that you remember where Chuck just kind of, he made one of those statements, that was like, hey, this thing?
I don't remember his making a particular statement that I can remember. I too had two little boys and a little girl in 1966 that were very young, and I really wasn't thinking about much else. But I do know that all of the rest of Chuck's life, after having made that film, that he was as pleased with that film as with any other film he'd ever made. That it was none of his, he never believed that anything he had done was perfect or was as good as it should have been. Like Sarah's father said, I think it's pretty good, and someone commented on the chat, pretty good. Yeah, right. but I think Chuck felt that way about the Grinch too, that it was as good as anything he'd ever done, and that the team, all of the team, all of the visuals, the recordings, the behind the scenes people, everything came together and nothing really fell apart. There were no scenes that he wasn't happy with. There were no parts of it that he wished. He sometimes said some of his films should be cut up into banjo picks. I don't think he ever felt that. I don't think he ever felt about even one scene about the Grinch that way. I don't know that he was proud of it, because he didn't get proud of things, but he was happy with it. And he enjoyed that everyone else had so much joy from it.
Well,
That's well
I
said.
It is well said. We've got a question from Bill Heater, and it's, Linda, when did you first see the film? Was it when it first aired, or was it sometime later?
No, it was when it first aired. We watched it as a family. Craig was there.
That was the same year that he received the Academy Award. That was my earliest memory, and it was in the same living room that we watched The Grinch. And so that was pretty. Or did we watch it? Wait, did we watch it down at their house?
No,
Mother?
no,
It was at our
our
house.
Yeah.
Yes, our little tiny home, but it was great. Yeah.
And you had a question for Sarah, Ben?
I did. What my question was, what people may not realize is, at the time that and Dr. Seuss are wanting your father to take this part, your father's very humble man, but he's a big deal. He's a very big deal, and very sought after. And I read even a piece a little bit later, even in his later years, if he was in a film in the credits, and or not in the credits, but if he was in the film itself, he would be featured on the poster as well, more than what else was going on, even including, like, they'd highlight his name over the film name, like Boris Karloff is in the film, right? So like his legacy and that air of just bigness to his name carried through the whole time. Was there something in it where, did he ever feel kind of overwhelmed by that, especially after the Grinch, launches and it becomes what it becomes? Was there anything that did any time it feel overwhelming, or was it just a thing, like he took it in stride?
He was very, very grateful, because he'd spent 20 years in the business before he had any success or could really count on his next meal. So he, with tongue in cheek, he referred to the monster as his best friend, because that role made such a pivotal difference in his life, both personally and professionally. And so thereafter, he took nothing for granted. He was totally appreciative of everything that came his way. He was humble, and he knew what it was like to be a starving actor. He was, I think that's why he was so pleased to have the opportunity to be one of the founding members of the Screen Actors Guild. His card number was number 9. And he never spoke about it. He never, he wasn't invited to the premiere of Frankenstein. And he just took things like that in stride because he just felt grateful for the job. And he very, very often expressed his gratitude for being in interviews and across the board. He would express his gratitude for just being the luckiest man he knew, for being able to spend his life doing something he truly loved and then be jolly well paid for it.
Yeah, Chuck felt exactly the same way.
Yeah.
I mean, I know, weren't they lucky? Weren't they
Yeah.
lucky? Really?
And Chuck felt the same way, that he was just grateful. And he said that when he got that Oscar, that he got paid, not exorbitantly by any means, but he was comfortable, and that he got to do what he loved to do. And
my father didn't get well paid certainly by yesterday's standards or by today's standards.
Right.
But by the standards of when they worked, he was paid. But that was a change from the first 20 years of his career, you know? So, I mean, he truly remained grateful for being able to work at something he loved.
Well, you know, we've got some questions coming in. Art's my niche. I'm going to save that one for just a little bit later because we have some stuff to show. You know, what I love, and you all just said what I was thinking was, and you know, I think our audience would, I will speak for all of us, is when you hear these stories and you meet the people in the family and how the legacy moves forward, it's always something that is near and dear to me, to know that the people that I look up to, you know, that I've looked up to, whether I've met them in person or not, but that have influenced me, are such wonderfully gracious people and highly talented, amazing people, and yet, you know, just down to earth. And I think it just reinforces my my warm heart in all of this for what I have for that, because you can see it through, you know, Linda, Craig, the family, Sarah, you can see it through you, you know, and I think it's just a wonderful thing. And it reinforces that feeling of good that you have, you know, for people who have influenced you at the level that they have. So kudos to all of you. Yes,
I'd like to say that the legacy and the length of the legs of my father's legacy is due to the fans. The fans are remarkable. And were it not for the fans, I'd be staying home cleaning my own oven. I mean, it's the fans are absolutely remarkable. And I've learned so much from the fans. And they know far more about my father's career than I could ever learn. And they have the nicest stories that they stand in line to share. And the first time I forget that I'm nothing but a conduit, I better stay home and clean my own oven because I'm nothing but a conduit. But it was the fans that have perpetuated the length of time that my father is remembered as fondly, and with broad-based legacy that he has.
Well, I'll say an amen to that and to the fans as well. But you know what? You exemplify it also.
There's a beautiful picture of Boris and the Grinch in the book.
There you go.
I mean, them sitting there with the book. I mean, that's with Dr.
Linda,
Seuss.
Is that your book, Linda?
No.
No, that one
was
didn't have notes in it.
No, this one, this was several books later.
Okay. I mean, what a good night.
Well,
Oh, there
there's
are the
all the
presentation.
storyboards. Yeah. So all the ones that he and Maurice had created, and then he took that book out, and these were the executives that were in the studio. They got to be there that day to witness this because they'd put the $366,000 into the project, so they got to be there. Sara, the treat of having you tell a little insight about your father and his joy of participating in this. And somebody mentioned in the notes that when I first debuted this last year in New York, that I had said, and I sat with Chuck when we asked him to talk about the drawings and sign a few of them and whatnot, that he said, this is probably the greatest piece of animation that was ever made in my opinion, because of who all worked on it. And he'd look at the nuances of the drawings and talk about which animator did which drawing and the details of it all. So, it was a treat to hear that he enjoyed it so much, Sara. And so I appreciate that, that you're, and sharing all the rest. So.
Yes.
Well, I appreciate being included this evening very much.
Total
Thank you.
treat. So
treat for me.
As we go through and take a look at some of the drawings, Scott will probably get into where we've seen this sled. Let's go ahead and start with 16. We'll move our way through 21 and then kind of work our way through the production. Is you got some stuff there too, Sir Craig, and we will bring in Ben Washam's grandson, who yeah. Hey, we're bringing in all the family. So there's something about, specifically in this film, that there's so much that you take a 10, clearly an 8-minute, 10-minute read, right? And you make it into a 22-minute film. And I think, and it's, again, hard to pick favorites in this, but if you pick things that you start to gravitate to, this sequence, when I read that, as Chuck's looking for places in where to, add more to the film without adding to the book, right? How are you going to, move that where there is no dialogue, and you put that in. And this sequence with Max and going down the hill, you feel bad for him. He's the sympathy boat right there is Max. I love that sequence, and it's probably something that to read what Chuck put into it and how he used that to, bridge a gap in dialogue, but still further the story is amazing. And wait a second, what do you have, Craig?
Well, you like that scene. I just figured, so this is an original production drawing from that sequence that you love so much. And this is the type of thing that I would show to Chuck, and he'd be like, look, and I'm going to confirm, yes, this is the Ken Harris sequence. He did pretty much the entire sequence down, but look at the detail of each of the strokes and whatnot. And just the brilliance. And this is one single 24th of a second in that sequence. I'm loving, and then this one is a Tom Ray sequence of coming down with Max, flying in front. Yeah.
You know what production drawings. I am all about the production drawings.
Yes, I know. So, all right.
I'm just oogling because when you see how, what I love about it is the look of the film, and I love that line work, and from the pencil line to the ink line, it was on, and it translates so well. I love just all the movement. You already
all right,
know.
you go back to your layouts for a second, and I'll see if I can match you with a production drawing. We're going to have a little contest here. You get a layout drawing, I'll see if I can find a production drawing for it, and we'll see who did it.
I would like layout drawing 20, please, Scott Ryder. CJ layout 20. Yeah, that one. All right, Mr. Wizard.
That's good. Well, you look at the detail. Hold on. Let's see where.
First of all, can you imagine animating that many teeth on a saw? I probably would have lost my mind. right?
I know.
Like, no, there's 31 teeth. There doesn't, not 29, there's 31 teeth.
Yep. Let's see if because this is when he's annoyed. So I'm going to go back. We can.
All right. We're close.
I know. Oh, there you go.
Oh, the eyes. Come on.
Because you hold. I mean, look at that. I mean, you have to animate obviously the detail of it.
But look at the
And this
little
is-
tick marks and the fur and stuff. Ben,
Hey,
watch
look who it is. Yep.
Okay, hold on. All right, now let's do something. Let's
All
play
right.
Foursquare. Let's play Foursquare. Okay.
Let's do it.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Hey, Ben.
Hey, thanks for having me. Yeah, that's correct. Trevor Washam, my dad, was Benny Washam's son.
Right.
That is cool. Nice to actually see you and talk to you, Ben.
Yeah,
That's
thanks for
so
having me.
cool.
So you know, obviously, great name. Love Ben. Goes without saying. Now, was there something that you've showed and you've texted back and forth some really cool stuff, and we've gotten to know each other a little bit online on Instagram, and you've also showed some super cool things. So I know you've got some goodies.
I do. I'm gonna look through my folder here. My camera setup is not as cool as Craig's, but yeah. Let's see here. Well, yeah, I posted a drawing the other day. I was trying to do like a replication. It's a little glary. Sorry.
Ooh, but you got. Oh, I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
Flopping over. Sorry. So
fantastic.
there's this one.
What?
There you go.
What?
Come on.
That's
There,
the one I replicated.
Craig. He beat you. He found
Yeah.
one closer.
I know. Holy mackerel. Oh,
I wish I had more. I only have a handful of them, but
nice.
Are those original production drawings?
yeah.
Oh,
Sorry
Come
for the
on.
second.
Come on.
oh, geez.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there's
Oh.
there's the ringer right there. That's the ringer.
Woo-wee.
Yeah.
That is amazing. So yeah, I just looking at the ones like this. That's your grandfather's.
That's so crazy.
Come on.
There, this one. That one is Benny's.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the eye. Chuck would like.
Just the eyebrows alone. It's just
Look
like,
at the eyebrows. I mean, that's
Look at the little
1/24th
above
of
the
a
eye.
second.
I mean, from the camera, just from here, I can like almost see like the lead weight, like
Yeah.
so
Oh,
dense. It's
so good.
Technically, it's 1/12 of a.
Well, if they shoot it on twos, you're right. If they do. All right. Fair enough.
Ah,
Well, some of your audience is going to get on your case for it.
well, I want to thank you, Ben, for popping on and showing us some of those special things. Like, it's a great connection to all of this. And thank you for being willing to pop on and
yeah,
join
thanks
the
for
show.
having me.
Absolutely. Ben's got stuff. Craig, Linda, you've got stuff. How do things get saved, from this film when, back in the day, it wasn't considered anything to save, right? I remember all the stories of, using, you have cell washers, so, they reuse it because celluloid costs so much, or just using them to sketch across the floor and see how fun that was to slide on cell switch, just now, when we get into like how we even have these things and the retention of work after Chuck Lee's Warner Brothers and doing all these things, and then that UCLA storage incident, with the broken water mains and all that kind of jazz, there's not a lot of this out here. I'm like, that was amazing, some of the production drawings you have, and then what Craig's been showing. So like, Linda, what goes into the, obviously you pioneered this, and so what's in with the preservation of like all
Well,
these
let me just say that so many of the drawings, the animation drawings, were saved by the animators, so that as reference for other scenes or other films. The things for the Grinch were not as necessary because they didn't expect to make another Grinch, but as far as the drawings are concerned, the animators saved a lot of them for their own reference. The cells themselves were not saved. And of course, I mean, most people, there are people who did save some and took some home, but most of them were destroyed by Warner Brothers, and not the UCLA fiasco, but other fiascos. but the cells were not considered to be useful for
Right.
the animators in the future. So
I have to say that every year, regardless of whatever they remake, right? Whether it's, yeah, don't worry, we won't even go there. Whether it's my older kids who are college age or my younger kids who are elementary school, there's only one film that kicks off the Christmas season, right? And that's Chuck's How the Grinch Stole Christmas.
And I miss it every year.
Every year, we do it every year. And by the way, it's multiple times. It doesn't just happen once. And so in that vein of Merry Christmas and kicking this all off, I just want to say to everybody, for all of our attendees, thank you so much for joining us for this. I get a kick out of the fact that I get to just be a part of this. And thank you guys for joining. If there's anything that you've seen tonight, you can just reach out to your consultant. They can help you out with this. I love being a part of animation history and having it hang on my walls as well. I want to say thank you to Linda, because I love you and you're the best. And I can't wait to see you again. You're one of those people that are a favorite of mine, and because you are you, and you are so generous with your time and your stories and just everything about you. And I just love it. Craig, I maybe your younger brother, just there's a gap, but but it works.
It works. It works.
Yeah, it works. I've got more white and hair than he does. So
That's not tough.
I want to say thank you to Craig. I love hosting these things with you. The Grinch it's a staple of come now of our Christmas season and our third time going around. And I love doing this stuff. I nerd out, I do, and you let me be a part of this. And thank you so much for your generosity in that. And Sarah, wow, I'm gonna fly out to. No, you just wait. I'm gonna fly out to Palm Springs just so I can meet you. You wear your Grinch socks. I'll wear my sweater. It might be a little.
I have a better sweater. Don't I have a neat sweater?
I just have an average. I will wear my average sweater, right? And I'll put on my dollar store blinking necklace, and you
What
can
month
outshine.
are you coming?
Whenever the show is, he's going to come out.
Okay, I'll wear my Grinch sweater, my green one.
Yep.
You wear your green one. I'll wear my red one. We'll be festive. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Deal.
I'll wear my slippers if you're not careful.
No, I'm going to dare you on that, and I think you should wear your slippers. I will wear my socks, and I don't like to wear socks. I usually
I'll
only
wear my Grinch socks too.
You wear your Grinch socks. We're in. We're going to figure this whole thing out. It's going to be the Sarah and Ben show, right? But just
It'll be the Craig and Linda show.
it'll be the Craig and Linda show starring Sarah.
There
in
you
her
go.
Grinch.
I love it. Let's do that.
Thank you very much for including me.
You're welcome.
Thank you for being here.
I don't
Thank you
cry
guys.
often.
I want to say have a wonderful, wonderful holiday season. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and we look
Merry
forward to
Grinchmas.
Merry Grinchmas. Ooh, yeah,
Yes.
that's a good poll. All right.
I'll let her sign it off. You go ahead, Sarah. Merry Grinchmas. You're
Merry
the last
Christmas,
word.
everyone. And happy, healthy New Year.
Thank you, dear. Good night, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. Thank you, Craig. Merry Grinchmas.
Merry Grinchmas.